Welcome to Book Buddy. Elizabeth's Thanksgiving Surprise. A Becca book. "Hurry, Elizabeth," called her mother. "Your cornmeal mush will be cold." Elizabeth jumped out of bed and quickly put on her warm clothes. She shivered in the cold morning air. She must hurry, for today there was work for everyone to do in the little colony of Plymouth. Tomorrow was the day of the big Thanksgiving feast. Elizabeth ate her mush. As she did, she wished again that she didn't have to eat the same thing for breakfast every day. But she knew that she really should be thankful for each bite. There had been hard times in the past, but now Elizabeth's family had plenty of food for the cold winter which lay ahead. Friendly Indians had shown the group of pilgrims how to plant corn, and they had taught them the best ways to hunt for animals. "At least I won't eat mush tomorrow," Elizabeth said. "No, not tomorrow," said her mother. "Tomorrow is a special day. The men have been hunting and fishing. They have brought in wild turkey, duck, deer, fish, oysters, and clams. Tomorrow is going to be a big day of celebrating and feasting and prayer." Elizabeth thought of the good baking odors that had filled the kitchen for days. Her mother and the other pilgrim woman had spent many hours baking and cooking. Elizabeth, too, wanted to help, but she wasn't old enough to do any of the baking. So far, she had only been able to help with little jobs. If there was only something big she could do for the Thanksgiving celebration. "I'm going to need a lot of help this morning," said her mother. "There is still much to be done. Why don't you begin by sweeping the floor?" Elizabeth picked up the twig broom and began to sweep. Her mother went to the woodshed for firewood. In a few moments, she returned with a straw basket in her hands. "Look," she said, "some animal must have helped itself to the cranberries we picked yesterday. Half of them are gone. I was just going to get them ready to cook. Now there won't be enough cranberries for tomorrow." Elizabeth dropped her broom. She came to look at the half-empty basket. "Oh, Mother," she begged, "let me go pick some more. I know where they are. They're right along the trail, and I won't stay long." Her mother looked at Elizabeth and then at the basket of cranberries. "I guess it will be all right, but be sure you stay close to the trail. Don't wander off. Come home soon." "I will be careful," Elizabeth promised. She took the basket and happily set off down the trail. When she came to the cranberry patch near the path, all of the berries had been picked. There was nothing left but vines. Elizabeth decided to go a little way into the forest to find a new cranberry patch. Soon she found one. She began to fill her basket. When the basket was almost full, Elizabeth turned to start home. Suddenly, as though from nowhere, a large, powerful Indian appeared beside her. "Oh!" cried Elizabeth, and grabbing her basket, she ran toward the trail. In her hurry, she did not see the fallen branch that lay across her path. Her foot caught. Down she went, sprawling full length on the ground. Her basket flew out of her hands, and the precious berries scattered across the ground. "Oh!" she cried again, this time more unhappy than surprised. Her ankle hurt, her dress was torn, her berries were gone, and towering over her was the unfamiliar figure of the big Indian. He gazed at the sprawling Elizabeth. Gently, he knelt down to help her. He almost smiled. Picking up her basket, he said, "You wait here. I bring food." Then he disappeared through the trees. Elizabeth sat up and rubbed her ankle. She was no longer afraid. The Indian meant her no harm. She began to be very curious about what he might bring her. She sat quietly and waited. Soon she began to wonder whether the Indian would return at all. She had almost decided to go back to the settlement when he stepped silently into the clearing. He was carrying Elizabeth's basket. He motioned toward the settlement, and she started off with the Indian helping her along. The pilgrims gathered around to watch as the Indian helped Elizabeth to her home. When she got to her door, he handed her the basket. Eagerly, she looked to see what was in it. The basket contained a few handfuls of corn. Elizabeth was very disappointed. Corn was not new or different. She had hoped the Indian was carrying a surprise in the basket. She smiled at the Indian. "Thank you for the corn," she said politely, hiding her disappointment. "This good corn," the Indian said. "You wait, you will see." He took the basket to the open fireplace, where the woman had been doing much of the cooking. He greased a large pot with a strip of fat, then poured a few handfuls of corn into it. He covered the pot and set it on the hot stones of the fireplace. The pilgrims gathered around to watch. What a strange way to cook corn! He had not ground it, soaked it, or stewed it. He had put it dry on the fire. Surely the corn could do nothing but burn. Soon the settlers began to hear a gentle pop, pop from inside the pot. The Indian stood to one side and waited. When the popping sounds had stopped, he took the pot from the fire and lifted off the lid. There was a surprised murmur from the crowd. The pot, which had held only a few kernels of corn, was full of fluffy white puffs, and they smelled delicious. The Indian smiled. Then he scooped up a handful and held it toward Elizabeth. "You eat," he said. Elizabeth took one of the fluffy balls and tasted it. Then she took a few more pieces. They were crunchy, they were fun to eat, and they were good. A smile crossed her face. She nodded to the others, and they all began to taste the strange new thing. Elizabeth turned to her Indian friend. "This is very good food," she said. "Thank you very much." Elizabeth had done something big for the Thanksgiving feast. Because of her and the friendly Indian, the pilgrims had learned about popcorn.